menopause, hot flashes, not knowing where you left your coffee cup. We often hear women say, am I going crazy? Is it hot in here? Is it just me? Alyssa, are people going crazy as they start to experience these symptoms?
Oh my goodness, they surely think they are. A good portion of this is hormonal changes that affect every cell in our body. But the other thing is women going through perimenopause and menopausal transitions are lacking in good quality or good duration of sleep. They also are physically uncomfortable, perspiring, hot, and just generally moody and irritable as a result of that. Mental fogginess can come into play with cognitive changes. This is all part of the menopausal transition and hormone change, and something we really need to talk about. This should not be a forbidden topic. Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun-Sherrill. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode. I am thrilled that we're here today, Rachel, with Mike Satow. He is the CEO and president of Nutrition 21 and Bonafide Health. I will, in full transparency, disclose that I've known Mike for a long time, both personally and professionally. Mike, I know you also have a background as you are an attorney. So why don't you tell us how you've gone from law to nutritional supplements and women's health?
Absolutely. And I would also just say, by way of disclosure, that Alyssa, you delivered one of my sons. So
yes, I am so very well aware of that, but because of HIPAA compliances, I'm not allowed to report that on media.
It has been quite a journey to get where I am, but I've been an entrepreneur starting companies for more than 20 years. I think it's been about 23 years now, in a bunch of different areas. So it's really been a long time since I've been a lawyer. That was way back when. For most of the time, I've been focusing on areas that have significant amounts of opportunity, where there's real unmet needs, but solutions are just not available. And I found that's where there's the most opportunity. And certainly, women's health and menopause in specific is really very much an example of that. Unfortunately, I mean, it shouldn't be, but it is. And, I think some of it has to do with a certain amount of stigma. It's certainly true with Bonafide and what we're doing today. And it was true with my last company as well.
Alyssa and I live in this world of stigma and taboo and conversations. Alyssa is dealing with all these important topics and issues every day in her office, as do I from a business perspective. And clearly this isn't your first rodeo. You've successfully run businesses before. When you look at this business at Bonafide Health, share with us what the ultimate goal is from a business perspective, what the business model is, and how you came to this after obviously having a lot of other experience.
We're really trying to focus in on what we're calling natural alternatives to drugs. We think that that's a market that where there's a tremendous amount of need, and that's especially true in areas like menopause. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is to bring options to women that they don't now have. I think the need is particularly great. This demographically, the number of women entering menopause is really exploding. And since 2000, I think there's about 25% more women than there were in 2000 entering menopause, going from about 58 million to over 70 million. Demographically, the number of women facing, some of these issues is growing in numbers, but at the same time, from 2000 to 2020, for example, the use of HRT has declined from what was a $25 billion market, just a tremendously huge market, to just, I think it's 1.4 billion now. So you've had this huge collapse in use of drugs. to treat some of these symptoms, and at the same time, dramatic increases in the demographics. And when you look at the consumer market, you'd say, well, maybe women are using consumer products, but the fact is that the consumer market at retail for menopause products is well less than $100 million. It's tiny, and it hasn't grown at all. And so what is happening? I mean, that was really the question we were asking ourselves when we were looking at that. And I think what's happening, unfortunately, is a lot of women are just suffering through it, or not really feeling they have the options that they should have in addressing some of these challenges.
I couldn't agree with you more. I see this in my office, day in and day out. I mean, I speak menopause, so there's no taboo going on behind my office door. And many more women are admitting that they're in menopause at this point. So maybe that accounts for some of the increase in numbers. I have also seen clinically a decline in hormone use. Women are feeling like they want quote unquote natural alternatives, and often will feel like herbal products can suffice for that. I think there's a big distrust in the hormonal replacement therapy, although it works and it's considered quote unquote gold standard. There's definitely some distrust and concern about side effects. Tell me about the solutions you're offering specifically for, the iconic symptoms of menopause, hot flashes, night sweats, that type of thing.
It's all about options. And one of the reasons that we like to work with doctors so much is that it's important for women to speak to their gynecologists about what's right for them and understand all the options. And I think the more options there are that are valid for women, the better. For example, in the menopause space, our product Relazin is truly unique. The reason that a lot of women are not wanting to take hormone replacement therapy is maybe concerns around hormones and the effect it might have on their body. But the fact is, many of the supplements sold today, for example, using soy, are working through an estrogenic mechanism. So their phytoestrogens potentially could have some of the same concerns that hormone replacement therapy has. So one of the things that we really felt strongly about Relazin was it's, as far as I know anyway, the only product that's been demonstrably shown to not even be estrogenic. It's not hormonal, but it's not even working through that pathway. It's working in a different way. And so we think that's really unusual in the marketplace, and a great option for women to have.
Right. And you bring up a lot of women suffering in silence, which is so true. One population that I find this particular type of product, but just some of the non-hormonal options really helpful for, is the cancer demographic, because these are women who are already very frightened about cancers, whether it's a breast cancer situation where hormones are contraindicated, or other kinds of cancer that have just given people a reason to be gun shy about what they put into their bodies in general. What other types of women's health issues are you trying to address? Because it sounds like you've really done your homework in terms of the the data and what women are suffering from, and what they're finding is an unmet need for them.
Well, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. I just say one other thing too, just from a branding point of view, you look at the small size of that retail market, and I think some of that is just because the brands themselves are so outdated. And when you go and you look at some of these products, it's just not the kind of thing that, people of our generation is really going to be attracted to or understand or relate to, So I do think some of it is also just really innovating on the branding side, which we're trying to do. The actual impact and the kind of symptoms that we're trying to address are the most important thing. And so, one of our products is for vaginal dryness, for example, which is, a really big problem for many women and something they face. And, another area similarly where there's certainly drug options available, but we wanted to provide a non-drug option that works really well, and, kind of very similar to what we're doing with hot flashes, or for example, in terms of, sexual impact as well with our Restella product. So these are all areas that we feel, certainly there's a certain amount of stigma around them. But there really shouldn't be. But unfortunately, I think that's why there's been, less innovation.
I'm sure you get asked this question. So many of the people who are attracted to women's health, sexual health, reproductive health tend to be people who identify as women and or have those body parts. So what's the answer to the question, how does a guy like me end up at a place like this?
Here's today's hot flash. We're going to give you some stats about sexual dysfunction in women. The prevalence of sexual dysfunction in women in the US, probably between 25 and 63%. And I would suggest it's actually much higher than that, because this is just the number of women who are actually admitting to it. The outbreak is even higher in women in menopause, where sexual function really may decline for various reasons. So many variables go into sexual function: hormonal health, your physical well-being, chronic medical conditions, relationship status, you name it, it involves sexual health. But remember, sexual health and general health go hand in hand.
It's a great question, and it's one that I have to say my mother has asked me many times, and I ask myself. Like I said, my journey has been through, in many ways, looking at stigmatized areas and coming out of the mental health area, where I'm still very much involved from a nonprofit point of view, is a similar space. And so I really kind of identified, from a pattern recognition point of view, this great opportunity. I am not a woman, and I, in many ways, I wish I was in this space. I really do. But I have many women in my life, and I certainly can see the impact of a lot of these symptoms. And look, as a man who's aging, I have my own set of symptoms and that exist as well. So I think the important thing is to keep quality in mind and bring products to market that we can be proud of and that really work for women and kind of add to the innovation, or not just me too. And that's really the main focus that I've had.
So talk a little bit more about the business model. We're acutely aware of how challenging it is to have conversations around a lot of these topics for a lot of people, probably the folks on this podcast notwithstanding. Talk about the business model, how you attract customers, your approach to retail, because you started out by saying that's a woefully small market given how huge the need is.
We've really taken a playbook from the pharmaceutical industry. We have a national field force of sales representatives that detail physicians. Basically, we have probably about 10,000 or so physicians that we're calling on, and about more than 8,000 that are actively recommending our products to patients. What we do is our reps speak to the physicians about the data and the products and educate them on it and make them aware of those products and provide samples. And then the physicians, if they feel it's appropriate, will recommend those products to their patients, who can then just go directly to our website and buy them. So they don't have to go to the pharmacy. They don't have to get a prescription or anything. They can buy it directly from us. I do think it's important to note that we're not compensating physicians in making these recommendations. They're really recommendations based purely on the appropriateness of the product for their patients and based on the strength of the data. And I think, given that as most people know, dietary supplements aren't approved by the FDA the way that a drug is. And they are regulated, which I think a lot of people don't know, but they are regulated by the FDA, but not nearly as much as drugs. But I think it's even more important with a dietary supplement to have a trusted intermediary of a physician involved, if women want that, to help them decide what's right for them and provide them information.
This supplement world is the wild, wild west. I mean, there's so many availabilities. We really don't know how things are vetted. And it's always good to know that there's clinical information, studies that are either preclinical or clinical studies done on products, so that they can be at least recommended with as much safety as we can provide.
It's interesting too, though, because you think about launching a product to consumers, you're really worried about what claims you can make and things like that. But if you're launching it to physicians, you really have to look and say, well, is this data good enough that a real doctor is going to really recommend this supplement to their patients? It has to be really pretty strong data for that to happen.
So with your model, which is unusual for an over-the-counter product, especially in the area of women's sexual and reproductive health, how has COVID impacted that? Obviously, I would think many fewer reps are going into physicians' offices, or is that a faulty assumption?
It's a great question. And, I'd say that we were very fortunate, I think mostly because we're an e-commerce business and we're working with the mail and everything's coming through the mail. We've had an outstanding year. We've grown tremendously. And in fact, we'll end the year just around $30 million in sales for the business and growing, really from there. But we did have some challenges when COVID first came into play. And, I think early on, a lot of gynecologists stopped seeing patients. But I think what's happened is that, although it's been harder for our reps to access doctors in person, they've been able to continue to speak to them virtually and still occasionally in person. And doctors are still working with their patients, whether it's in person or through telemedicine. And so we've been able to continue our business pretty much without a beat.
That's terrific. And there's also been many studies and many reports about how sex is, sort of on fire. Sex is on an upward trend during COVID, whether it's what New York City said, that you yourself are your safest sex partner, or the fact that people have a lot more time in their home alone and or with a partner to think about a lot of these activities. And I know that all of your products aren't focused on, sexual enhancement, but sex and women's health and what we're doing in response to COVID has been in the news and in conversations, constantly over the past several months.
No, absolutely. And I think, really the move to self-care and really trying to take care of yourself during these very difficult times is even more important, to not be suffering through things that impact your quality of life. I think it's even more important than it was that women and everyone are able to be as healthy as possible during this time.
What is coming down the pipeline for Bonafide Health? Anything interesting you want to share with us?
Great question. Well, we're working on a whole variety of different products, which we're really, really excited about. And so I think there's going to be a lot more innovation coming forth. This year, we're going to be launching a new product for vaginal health. It's a probiotic for vaginal health that we're very excited about. And so that'll be launching a little bit later this year. Also a product that has some really excellent data and an area that we think is an excellent one for us. It's both an important area medically, but it's important that these conditions that we're treating are not life-threatening or anything. These are more life stage type conditions where these non-drugs are really appropriate.
Michael, do you see a future where you might also offer these products at retail?
It's absolutely something we're looking at, and so that is very possible. I think one has to look though at the huge disparity between the size of the prescription market, where you're talking billions and billions of dollars, and these very small numbers at retail. So far, I don't think retail has had very significant penetration into the marketplace on its own. So it's kind of an unusual circumstance versus a lot of other consumer categories.
And add to that the disparity between the pharmaceutical sales of products for male sexual health and females. So you have disparity on top of disparity.
That is absolutely true. That is probably the biggest disparity of any of them.
Well, looks like you're changing that, so that's good to know.
Where can people find out more who don't already know about you and Bonafide and the range of solutions that you offer?
Our website is hellobonafide.com. And I urge everybody to go take a look at our website, and thank you for allowing me to make that plug.
It's our pleasure. It's great to speak. Good luck.
And thank you for being such an important part of the important conversation and creating interest around women's health and basically improving people's lives.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.